So when I got to thinking about this presentation, I thought about the time of year it is, and it's hunting season in the state has just ended. So I was on the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife website, and I came across an article talking about the restoration of the white-tailed deer in Kentucky. I had no idea what that was all about. So a little bit of backstory. Near the end of the night, leading up throughout the 18th century, people just kind of, you killed what you ate. And white-tailed deer were very populous in this part of the country, so that was a big part of people's diet. And leading into the late 19th century, in the state, the population of white-tailed deer was hitting a record low, in the low thousands, some sources say. So, very late 19th century, 1894, Kentucky legislature passed a law making it illegal. They kind of established the first deer season, making it illegal to kill a deer between March 1st and September 1st. And this kind of helped for a few reasons. One of them being this time of year, fall, winter, and then even into early spring, is when deer have the most body mass in them. So taking out deer hunting in the summertime, that helps keep more deer alive, because one deer worth of meat this time of year when they have more body mass may be worth 3 deer in the summertime. So that was kind of the first step towards protecting the population of white-tailed deer. And leading up to this, 1912, sportsmen in the state had pushed legislators to form a game commission and to start paying more attention to this issue. So in 1912, the Game Commission closed the state to deer hunting due to historically low amounts of white-tailed deer. And there's a typo there. People ate what they killed. They are not what they killed. So this is just kind of what I said before. It was a major source of food and income for families, pelts, and people would sell meat. And in the 19th century and even in the early 20th century, there was very little management of this. So in 1912, they closed the state to deer hunting, and in 1929, famed conservationist, Isaac Burnham, he brought 15 red deer from Europe. And that's a species of deer that's found in Europe, particularly in Spain, and they're massive, they're related to elk. And he put them on a 14,000 acre plot of land that is called the Burnham Arboretum and Research Forest. It's about 25 miles south of Louisville. And he did this as a means of conservation to bring some more wildlife and diversity into the ecosystem. So a few years go by late 1945, early 1946, this herd of red deer had gotten so massive that farmers started complaining about it. They were destroying their crops. They had almost become an invasive species. So in January of 1946, the state held the first deer hunt since before World War II. And it cost $10 to participate in the hunt. And they tacked on another $15 if you actually killed a deer. And during the hunt, only 30 deer were tagged, which doesn't seem like a lot for as many red deer as there were, but it was enough to kickstart the state government's focus into protecting these herds, and it started a desire to bring whitetail and more sporting like that into the state. So in the 60s and 70s, the state started trapping white-tailed deer in Wisconsin, which is one of the most popular states for white-tailed deer. So they started bringing them down and releasing them in numerous counties around the state. And in the first stages of this, there was very little done, just like in the 19th century, for management. So in the 60s and 70s, leading into the early 80s, the deer population kind of crashed, just like it did in years before. So it became, in the late 70s, early 80s, as the population kind of dove down, they took notice and it became very intense. The efforts to protect these herds became very intense. And in 1976, Robert Willis and John Phillips established the first deer check stations, and the day after the 1976 deer season ended, they met up and tallied all the deer that were counted that season, and that was the main catalyst for all of this. So by the 1980s, the western two-thirds of the state, as a result of this stocking from Wisconsin, was they had enough deer to maintain the season each and every year. But eastern Kentucky, due to the rugged mountainous terrain of the state, did not hold viable herds of deer to have a season. So they sat down and they did some calculations, and it was determined that a county could have a deer season if there was more than one deer per square mile. So they said, well, instead of bringing only 50 deer per county, why don't we bring 500 deer per county, especially in the eastern part of the state, where it's more rugged and it's harder for these deer to live. So it paid off really well, bringing a lot more deer in. And as years went on, they flourished. And as it says here, in 1945, there were only 2,000 white-tailed deer. And depending on the season and how many deer are harvested in the season, the state maintains a constant population of anywhere from 900,000 to 1 million white-tailed deer. So it's really important to keep doing this, and I thought it was something pretty interesting.